and they were having a ceremony inducting some Hall of Fame people into the Southern Fly Fishing Hall of Fame, and they told me, they'd like for me to attend the meeting because I was going to be inducted in. So I attended, and the master of ceremony started talking about me, and when I walked up there, I thought he was going to faint because he thought I was dead.
That was Dave Whitlock with one of the many classic stories he shares today on the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today. We'll help you on your fly fishing journey with classic stories covering steelhead fishing, fly tying, and much more.
Hey, how's it going today? Thanks for stopping by the Fly Fishing Show. Please subscribe to the podcast and share it with one other person today who you think would love to hear from Dave Whitlock and the great stories he has. Dave Whitlock is on today to share some of those stories and a little focus on the White River and his life in fly fishing. Dave is one of the most well-known fly fishermen in the world and digs into a little bit on terrestrial patterns today, shares some funny stories, and tells us whether he's an artist or a fly fisherman first. This one has been a long time coming, so I'm really excited to share it with you today. If you stay till the end, I've got Henry Hughes on to read a poem from the recent edition of the Fly Fishing and Tying Journal. Before we get started, I wanted to take a moment to thank our sponsors. SoFly Gear, headed up by 17-year-old James Carlin of the U.S. Youth Fly Fishing Team, has a buttery soft, quick-drying line that I have been loving. Head over to SoFlyGear.com and support James and the podcast. We are also supported by the Fly Fishing and Tying Journal, has an exceptional fall edition out right now. Head over to FTJangler.com to support the great work Craig and the gang have created just for you. That's FTJangler.com. So without further ado, here is Dave Whitlock from DaveWhitlock.com. How's it going, Dave?
Well, good morning, everybody, and good morning, Dave. It's fine. It's a great fall day here in Oklahoma, cool and clear, and just getting ready to start our beautiful Ozark fall.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, I just had a guest on. Brian Wise was from Ozark Fly Fishing. He talked about tying streamers, and This is exciting. This has been a long time coming. I've been trying to get you on. I know you went through some things a couple of years ago, and I'm really happy that you're here.
I had a little bit of an AFib problem, or a big one, and I lost 27 pounds and was in the hospital off and on for about 7 days. But they got me all cleared up, and I've got a great heartbeat and good blood pressure and and good oxygen. So maybe I got another year or two filled up ahead of me. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it sounds like you're sounding good, and I think you're about the same age as my dad, and it's interesting because I know talking to him, he's I don't know if he's fished as much as you, but he's spent his life fishing, and he's slowed down quite a bit over the last few years. And this COVID thing, I mean, how's COVID doing? Is everything going okay on that end?
Well, I'm completely quarantined here.
Yeah.
We live on a ranch. And I don't go to town or anything.
Great.
I really miss going to the health club every day, or not every day, but every week. And that's probably the thing I miss most as far as being able to go outside. But we've had some students here, and they mask up, and we take a lot of precautions. But it's a tough thing, A lot of people are trying to figure out a way to cope with it, change their lives.
I know. We're dealing with it, but well, let's jump into fly fishing. You obviously have probably one of the biggest names as far as I'm concerned in fly fishing, and I think when I was a little kid, I picked up a book, The Guide to Aquatic Trout Foods, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But can you just bring us back to how you first got into fly fishing and tell that story?
Well, I'm born and raised in Oklahoma. The parents that were lower blue collar workers, they didn't have much money during the Depression, and when I was 8 years old, my folks all fished, but they fished mostly for food rather than sport. And when I was 8 years old, I was thumbing through the pages of my granddad's L.L. Bean catalog, and I saw this fishing rod and these fishing lures. I'd never seen an artificial lure with feathers and hair tied onto it, and I had no idea that they were flies. And so or it was a fly rod. It was a beautiful thing. It was a bamboo rod with red wraps on it, and I'd never seen anything so beautiful. And I asked my granddad. I said, "Grandpa, what is this?" And he said, "Dave, that's fly fishing, not for us, only for the rich people." And so fast forward to 1980, and I became the head of the L.L. Bean fly fishing program for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Now, how in the world could somebody, it's like somebody born in the Sahara Desert becoming, a great swimmer. It was just meant to be. There was no rhyme or real reason why it was that way other than it just meant to be.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I just thinking about years, I think when you 8 years old, that's right around 1940. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, 1940.
I was born in 34, yeah.
Oh, 34, yeah. 1934, yeah. So like I was saying, my dad, I think, he was born in 39, so you got him by about 5 years. So, okay, cool. Well, we skipped a lot in between there, 1940 and 1980, and obviously, getting to the point where I know a little bit of the history. I mean, I could just briefly, I think what it came down to is your mom, because you were kind of coming out of the Depression era.
Yeah.
They really wanted you to have a good, solid job, but you really had a passion for fly fishing early, and you bypassed it, right, for a few years. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I through my teens, and I gradually learned to fly fish, and I was bad at it for a long time, but I loved it so much it didn't matter. And so by the time I got to college age, I knew I wanted to be an artist and a writer, and I wanted to particularly write about fly fishing. My folks really discouraged it because they just felt like that was not the best way to spend an education. So I got degrees in not degrees, but majors in chemistry and physics and biology. And I went to work in petroleum research, production research in Tulsa and Bartlesville until I was 35. And it was good work. It was pretty confining, with labs and what have you. But and I was pretty good at it. But it was never. I was around people and places that I just prefer to be someplace else. So when I was 35, I quit my research job and became Dave Whitlock. And that meant that I was earning my living tying flies and writing and painting and lecturing about fly fishing. So just exactly what I always wanted to do. And Dave, it was successful. But within about a year, I was pretty much self-employed, self-sustaining employed, and so ever since then, that's what I've been doing.
That's it. And that would, again, just years-wise, that would take us to about 1965, somewhere in that range, when you kind of went all in.
Yeah.
What did that feel like when you finally, can you take us to that
It
moment?
Was wonderful.
Was it?
It was wonderful to finally be your own boss, have your own hours, have your own work ethic, get the credit for what you did, rather than somebody else getting credit for it. Because many times, when you work for different companies, and particularly if you're creative or in that way, you don't get credit for it. Somebody else gets credit for it. And it was just a fantastic thing. And I worked a lot harder, but it was a very self-satisfying work because it was, it was mine, and I still even today work, 8 to 10, 12 hours a day because I love it.
Oh, wow. Wow, so you're still working strong and still doing.
Oh yeah, every day. Usually I get into my studio or office about 8 or 9 o'clock, and I work until noon, and have about an hour nap, and then get up, and then I usually work till about 7:30 in the evening.
Oh wow!
And then I head back to the house. My studio and office is about 100 yards from my from my home.
Oh, great. And what keeps you busy? What are you working on these days?
Mostly artwork, mostly original paintings, and I'm getting ready to do a big new series for Trout Magazine, and it's going to be quite a production. I can't tell you about it right now, but it's significantly more than I've been doing for them every issue, and I'm really excited about it.
Nice.
So they're really the only one. Excuse me. They're really the only ones that I write for now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and
initially I was writing for the fly fishing magazines, but that was began it kind of started becoming nowhere near as satisfying, and I don't know whether you know it or not, but they just don't pay anything at all. You'd starve to death if you tried to be a fly fishing writer, precisely. So I just use the other venues, and the art is my real true love. When I'm painting or drawing, outdoor subjects, I'm just as happy as if I had a fly rod in my hand.
That's great. So you consider this is a kind of an artist versus a fly fisherman. Which one would you consider yourself first at, or maybe the bigger one?
Well, the one I like to do most is art.
Oh, really?
But the fly fishing and the art are just like my right and left hand. I would not ever want to do without either one of them.
Yeah. No, it's cool, and your artwork you can be seen not only in a lot of the books and work you've done, but you've published in like you said, other journals and things like that.
Yeah. One thing is that being an illustrator for so many years, it really empowered me to do some special things for people's books and for my own books and magazines, because I had the knowledge of the sport, and I could show that with my artwork. And one picture sometimes is better than 1,000 words.
Think of a brown trout or something like that. How would you, when you're drawing something like that, give that personality?
Yeah. Well, first of all, like a brown trout is just a supreme predator, and they have incredibly unique markings, and making those vivid markings and then creating in the head, a predaceous look in the eye and the forehead of them, and it gives them really what they're thinking about, and that is killing and eating something. So, but you can make the body beautiful, but as you come into doing the head and the eye, you begin to put that attitude of, yes, I'm going to catch you and eat you.
That's right. Yeah, they're ferocious predators. So, well, it's interesting because I think of myself, like I said, I remember when I was a kid and knowing, your name out there and all of that. I mean, what do you attribute, kind of your success and your name, how you're one of the biggest names out there over the years? Do you have anything you can point back to, when you think back of your history?
I probably already said it, just a love for it and studying every minute that I possibly could, studying any little puddle of water, any pond, any creek, or any river, any lake, to see, to see what lived there and what and how it existed and what fed on it and what have you. It's always just been, my keenest interest, and I think that's kind of the epic of the story of fly fishing is that you look at a water and the first thing you say is what lives there. And what lives there, what does it feed on, and where does it feed on it, and how does it feed on it? And you approach the opportunity to catch a fish or whatever is there with a fly, and that's just kind of my epic as far as I'm approaching the subject.
Yeah, that's it. So basically, that passion. If somebody was listening now that's maybe new to fly fishing, it might be the same thing. Just tell them to say, hey, just stick with it and go in every day, put something out there.
And look past the surface of the water. You know what I mean? Try to figure out what's really going on, because it's a wonderful story. There's never 2 days a year that's alike in a stream or a lake or a pond, and seeing that evolving episode is so fascinating to a fly fisherman, because we can take advantage of it. We can kind of become actors in that scenario with that. Or that drama.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Well, I want to talk just briefly a little bit about some dry fly. We're going into a dry fly fishing season, and I've had a number of people on. We've talked a little bit about this, but, maybe you could talk about your home water now. I know you've moved over the last few years, but can you talk about your home water and maybe talk about some of the hatches there and some of the dry flies fishing you have?
Well, first of all, Dave, where I live is in the upper northeastern part of Oklahoma, and that's the foothills of the Ozark Mountains. And we have for trout, there are some few spring creeks that are stocked or that have wild fish in them.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's tailwater fishing, blow dams.
Yeah.
And this time of the year on the White River system up in the Ozarks, where primarily that's for 40 years my home water, this time of year you have microcaddis hatching mostly in midges for surface flies. It's a little too early for the blue wing olives to hatch. They hatch a little later on in December, in January and February. But the spring creeks, of course, will have various blue wing olives and midges and whatever hatching this time of the year too. But what really is significant is terrestrials. All of these waters are receiving just tons of terrestrials this time of the year. Ants and beetles and lots of grasshoppers. Mm-hmm. And when I think of fishing on the surface in this part of the world, this time of the year, it's terrestrials.
Oh, nice. Well, and you've had, I know you've had a number of your own flies. I think one of the terrestrials I think about is you have a hopper pattern, right?
Well, it's probably the most famous hopper pattern in the world. If I could beat my own drum, the Dave's hopper, it's probably what I'm best known for around the world. Yeah,
that's right. And I've known the Dave's hopper for forever as well. What makes the Dave hopper? What makes that one stand out? Do you think? Why is it so?
It catches fish like the Dickens.
Yeah.
Well, what it is, Dave, is that with the knowledge and ability that I have when I tie flies, I'm more of a I'm a engineering sculpture, so to speak, with flies, and I try to make a fly look like what it's supposed to imitate, but also sound and act like what it's supposed to imitate. And so I guess you basically fish well. Mm-hmm. And the Dave's hopper looks like a real hopper, but when it hits the water and the way it floats and the way it acts like a hopper. And there's a lot of different other hopper designs and patterns, but I really believe probably this particular fly is as close to perfection as you ever need to get to imitating a hopper.
Nice.
And I think most people who fished it would agree.
Yeah. I'll put a link in the show notes with a couple. There's a bunch of videos of people that have tied it online.
Yeah.
And it's got
we have a DVD of the history of how to develop the Dave's hopper, and also how to accumulate the material to tie it and how to tie it and how to fish it.
Oh, cool.
So if anybody's interested really in getting into Dave Hopperology, that DVD would put them 20 years ahead.
Perfect. In that DVD, can we find that at your website?
Yeah, on the website, yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, I'll put a link to that as well so everybody can go there and grab that. So I think the terrestrials is really an interesting topic. Maybe we can dig a little more into that. I did want to check in a little bit. We had a few questions from our Facebook group. Listeners out there, and one of them, this is a lot of different subject. I guess we're kind of changing the subject, but Bruce Cruck was asking about. He had this. He talked about the fly fishing video for bass back in the day. He said had a real big impact on him. Can you talk about that video a little bit?
Yeah, well, I did two of those. I don't know which one he's talking about. I did one for an independent, Dave Millen down in Texas. That was the first one, and then I did one for Bass Pro. Because for 4 years I was their fly fishing consultant, and I did a instructional video for them. So I'm not quite sure which you're talking about. But having said that, both of them pretty much followed the same format, and that's basically, how to approach a bass fisher with a fly rod, and what flies to use, and how to cast them, and how to retrieve them, and how to hook bass, and how to land bass. So they. The storyline was pretty much the same on both.
Gotcha. And do you have some, as far as on the bass end? I mean, you're in that area. I know, in fact, I had a really good friend who went to college in Oklahoma and fished bass all the time. So is that something you still
almost every day.
Oh, wow.
Well, first of all, my front yard is a bass and bluegill pond.
Nice.
I have an 1.75 acre pond that is my front yard. And we keep it well stocked with bass and sunfish for instruction when our students come here. And in the wintertime, we stock it with trout. So I don't have to go very far to catch a bass, if I decide to. But where I live on this ranch here, we have, there's 8 ponds or lakes, and we have a beautiful smallmouth stream. So I'm just living,
Amazing.
Shortcast away from that warm and cool water opportunity.
That is really cool. And the students, I want to check in with you on that because I know that you guys had a school right back in the day. Can you talk about a little bit about that school? And then you also, I think you closed it down back in 2004. Was that correct?
Well, yeah. Well, I had, I started really my serious teaching with the LL Bean.
Okay.
And then Bass Pro made me an offer to an opportunity to develop a wonderful nature park and trout stream, and also the carrot was, I'll build you a beautiful fly fishing school if you'll come work for me. And so I did, and we built the stream, but the fly fishing school never got built.
Oh.
And so I moved on to Gander Mountain and did the same thing for another 4 years. And then Emily and I just kind of looked at each other and said, we need to be doing this for ourselves.
Yeah.
Working for these big box companies, it's tough.
Right.
If you're a creative person or you're trying to really do things that aren't necessarily earning a lot of money, but have a lot of aesthetics or a lot of just personal interest for people. So we created our own schools, and we did it for 10 years in Arkansas, and we took 8 students for 3 days, and and we did it just like we wanted to do it, which was the best way to do it. And I don't think there's ever been a fly fishing school anywhere that was more complete for a 3-day opportunity for a fly person to learn what fly fishing is and the basics of fly fishing, and then fishing still water and fishing flowing water and tying flies. And we had all of that in that course. And so we just have we have an alumni group like you can't believe, but because we sowed the seeds so well that they became very avid fly fishermen, and their friends and their families, and I even have one family of 3 generations that basically were fly fishing because of that school.
Oh wow, there you go. So, and you guys still do some teaching right now, right?
Yeah. Now we live in Oklahoma, as we mentioned, and what we do there, we do Day with Days or Day with Dave and Emily, and we and 1 to 4 people come and spend the day with us, and it's not a structured school. They usually come and tell us kind of what they want to learn, and we evaluate what their skills are, and we proceed through the day or the next 2 days, basically customizing the school to exactly what they want to do. I had a school yesterday, and the gentleman wanted, wife had never caught a fish before, and she wanted to learn how to fly fish and catch a fish. And so Emily, mainly instructed her. And the gentleman had fly fished for about 15 years, and he wanted to learn how to roll cast a lot better and become a better smallmouth fisherman. So we took care of that for him that day.
There you go. Well, it's interesting looking back now. I kind of understand the history there. I mean, you started back early on kind of working for a company, and you're always trying to get back to that entrepreneurial, right? You love that thing, and you finally got there, and then Bass Pro and some big corporations came in, and you were kind of working for them, right? Then you got away from that, got back to your own thing. I mean, why is that entrepreneurial thing? Why did you always strive to get there? And it seems like most of your life was working for yourself. Why was that so important for you?
Well, because I think I'm artistic and creative, and it's awful hard to find a satisfying job working for somebody else when you need to be creative and you need to be artistic and whatever. They don't want you to do that. They want you to produce a product.
Right.
And I think I've always felt like that working, doing my own work, my own art, and what have you. I could do it the way I wanted to do it. And that's kind of the way but that's been my creed for most of my life, Dave.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I think it's
and
yeah.
I think almost anybody could do that. Just search their soul and find out what they really love to do most, and figure out a way, particularly here in our country, I don't think there's a better country in the world to be self-employed. The only thing you have to do when you become self-employed is have a good work ethic. You cannot survive if you're not willing to work more than 8 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
Especially at first. And but if you put that time in, the people will, and do it properly, people will come to your door, and you'll have all the work you ever wanted to do. Almost the minute that I became a full-time professional fly fisherman, job opportunities opened up to me all over the world. And it was because I was available. I wasn't somebody else's. And so it was easy to pick up the phone and have Dave Whitlock come and give them a lecture or a demonstration or illustrate a book for them.
That's really cool. Yeah, I've interviewed now, I think we're over 160 different people on this podcast, and I've heard so many stories similar to what you say, where people were working for, I remember one back where a guy was working for a fly shop, and he ended up kind of quitting because he was couldn't do what he wanted to do. And as soon as he quit, he had all these companies come out to him and said, "Come on, we come do work with us." And so it's that opportunity thing, right? Like you're on your own, and it kind of comes to you.
Yeah. Well, I worked as an employee 2 years for LL Bean, and the other 8 I was a consultant.
Oh, I see.
And the minute that I became an employee, because they wanted me to get better benefits for the time I was spending, and it was a really meaningful, nice offer. But Dave, the minute that I became an employee, they started treating me different. Not bad, but just different.
Yeah.
And they started telling me what to do rather than having me do what they needed.
Sure.
And so, and I think that's the way it is. And so if you work on for yourself, whether you're a plumber or whether you're an artist or what have you, you get to do it your way. And if you got the work ethic and you do it right, people are going to love patronizing you.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's powerful stuff. So you had another question here from the Facebook group. This is from Garrett Lesko, and he asked what inspires your fly tying and your dubbing blends? Right
now, I'm involved in writing my last great epic book, so to speak, and it's called A Fly Tyer's Life. And I'm going through all the history of how I developed, a lot of the things that I developed in fly tying. And one of them was dubbing. And I had learned about dubbing, when I first started tying nymphs and wet flies, and there wasn't very many people doing it at all, just a very few people, and they were taking animal hair, and blending it together. Probably Roseboro was probably the one that was the best known for it. And then he'd wrap it on a hook. And I realized that it was an unbelievably creative way to create naturalism, by blending hairs and different fibers together, and then wrapping them on the hook to create shape and movement and illusion and color. And so I began to do it. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that really, really, really advanced me way ahead was that I started making dubbing with a coffee bean grinder. And rather than using just a teasing the hair or putting in a jar of water like Father did with some detergent and shaking it up until it mixed, I started air blending it. And I was able to create dubbing textures and colors and amounts that just tenfolded my ability to really make gorgeous, perfect dubbing for any kind of a fly I wanted to create.
And now a quick word from our sponsor. Here you go. FTJ Angler has a great fall edition that's out right now. You can find Lucas Stevens, who visits Winston Fly Rods in the fall edition for an insider look at and a rare interview with writer Ted Leeson, someone I hope to have on the podcast soon. Patrick Wall pays homage to Harry Lemire's tied-in-hand Atlantic salmon flies displayed in the Marguerite Salmon Museum. Boots Allen takes us to the pond with a masterclass in Stillwater. Dennis Dobble travels to Scotland in search of Atlantic salmon. Plus, FTJ Deputy Editor Henry Hughes with a mysterious fly fishing story, and Nora Etsy with her poem No Business, which I actually tried to read unsuccessfully a few podcasts ago. I'm not sure if you remember hearing that. So I'd love it if you could press pause right now, head over to ftjangler.com and subscribe so you get the next issue delivered right to your inbox. That's ftjangler.com. SoFlyGear.com, led by Chief Apparel Guru and U.S. Youth Fly Fishing All-Star James Carlin, has a clothing line you're going to love. SoFly's mission to produce clothes that look good, perform well, can be worn on and off the water, and most importantly, are manufactured under rigorously sustainable methods. How do they do it? Bamboo, in a single word, a fabric that is buttery soft to the touch, durable, sun-resistant, and embossed with original designs and artwork. I've been wearing the SoFly hoodie on my last couple of steelhead trips, and it's been a game changer. Whether hot or cold, wet or dry, I've been feeling perfect in pretty much all conditions. I haven't taken this thing off. I mean, it's been pretty awesome. So totally support SoFly here. If you're ready to up your apparel game with this lifestyle fly fishing gear brand, head over to SoFlyGear.com. That's SoFly gear.com to get started today. And like I said, I've been loving it. So pick up a hoodie and you'll be like me and you'll be good to go. Okay, back to the show. And actually, Tyler, also from the Facebook group, mentioned your red fox squirrel hair nymph. That's a dubbing blend. Can you talk about the how that one came to be?
Well, that was a fairly early nymph. Initially, when I first learned about nymphs, about 90% of them were made out of hard bodies. In other words, either latex or quills or some opposite thing. And when we started dubbing flies, the first popular dubbings was mink hair and seal hair and otter hair. And living here in Oklahoma, I did not have any access to those kind of materials, but I did have rabbit and squirrel, and we shot a lot of red fox squirrels and gray squirrels to eat, and so I started shaving that body hair off of the red fox squirrel, not the tail, but the body hair, the belly and the back, and blending it, and blending it sometimes with a little bit longer fiber, like a similar color rabbit hair, and with my air blender, and it was just a phenomenal success for me, and I just started immediately having great success on trout and bass with it, and even today it's still, I think, the most productive nymph I've ever created. It works for everybody all over the world because it looks like trout food or bluegill food,
Yeah. It does.
And it's got the thorax is kind of a dark brindle dun color, and that's the back hair off the red fox squirrel, and the abdomen is the belly hair, which is kind of a fox tan or fox orange, and then the tail is made from a few hairs and underfur off the back, and in the front, the hackle part is either picked out guard hairs or one wrap of brown partridge, just to simulate 6 legs, not a whole lot. But sometimes when I'm tying a little bit bigger red fox squirrel nymphs in, say, size 12, the guard hairs aren't quite long enough on the thorax to simulate legs, so I just make one single wrap of brown partridge or a similar feather, like brown gamecock feather.
That's it. Yeah, and it looks a little like a it's kind of similar to like a hare's ear, right? If somebody
well, it's in that same. It's not really colored exactly, but it's in exactly the same class. Yeah. It's a suggestive fly that looks like a lot of things rather than imitating just one thing. But having said that, over the years, I've evolved the general pattern, which is the color thing, into 5 different designs, 5 different shapes. And anything from a scud shape to a stonefly shape to a shrimp shape.
Nice. So you got it all covered in there.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, and I wanted to go back to terrestrials just really quickly. You mentioned, we talked about the Dave's hopper. Are there other terrestrial patterns that you put out that are out there? I'm not familiar with other ones.
The ones that are being produced by commercial interest, the Ready Fly Company, are a carpenter rat, and it's called a hotspot carpenter rat, and it's a bright spot. Excuse me. It's it's a black deer hair or elk hair ant that on the top of it has a bright fluorescent red spot, so you can see it when it lays on the water.
Nice.
And that's always been a very popular fly for terrestrial fishermen.
Okay.
And then I make an inchworm that's the same way, and it's made out of deer hair, the body, and it's ribbed, and then a little fluorescent pink or orange spot on the top.
Okay.
And then another terrestrial is the periodic cicada, and that's made out of a foam rubber body with crystal hair for wings and rubber hackle for legs, and that's a really good seller too.
Oh, cool.
But those are the main ones.
Okay, those are the main. Great. And then if you take it to the river, one of those flies. Let's just take your hopper. If you are fishing that hopper on one of your streams, or on the White or wherever, any tips you want to throw out there when you're fishing terrestrials to help somebody get into some more fish out there?
Well, one thing is that you're going to have your best luck with hoppers if the water's against the bank where there's a meadow, and because that's where the hoppers are going to fall in. Forested areas, where there's a lot of trees, normally don't have grasshoppers, and
Gotcha.
So if you're going to do well with a hopper, as far as what fish are looking for hoppers, you find meadow areas where there's grass close to the bank and hanging over the bank, and water coming up fairly close to the bank, so that when the hoppers, jump off the grass, they fall in the water.
Yep.
And then the next thing is that those fish are keyed in more on the sound of the hopper than they are the sight of the hopper, because they listen for them to fall in. And so when you present the hopper, you want to plop it in just like a small stone. In other words, you want to make a significant plop on the water, and then let it set till it drifts about a foot or two, and then twitch it every so often. But that's usually the best way to do it. But fishing hoppers is really almost like fishing bass bugs. You're working the surface with noise and a large profile, and that brings the fish up.
That's a great tip for sure. Okay. So that gives us a little advice there to jump into. I was kind of curious, I know I've had Davy Wotton on the podcast in a past episode, and other people that and you're friends with.
What do you think about Davy? He's a character, isn't he?
Davy was, I love that episode because obviously he's a big name, but I mean, wet fly fishing, right? It's like,
oh yeah, he's my wet fly guru.
He's your wet fly. It's so cool because it's just this old school method, and that's part of the podcast here. It's a throwback, it's a tribute for me to the wet fly swing, just an old school method. So I love chatting with Davey. He's he's got lots of great information as well.
Well, Dave, so much of the traditional flies are still just as good today, but it's the marketing that causes them not to be popular, because most people who try to sell flies try to sell something new every year.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of the great flies that I've been in stores out west where they didn't have a Dave's hopper.
No.
They were selling just new bone-bodied hoppers and purple hoppers and pink hoppers and chartreuse hoppers, and so but it's marketing.
Yeah.
But those old flies are just as effective. The pheasant tail and the hare's ear and all those, they catch fish just as fast today as they did 50, 60, 100 years ago.
No, you're right. And there's been and I've interviewed a lot of people, younger as well, and this Euro nymphing and competitive, there's this whole other sector of flies now people are tying, which don't even look like any insects at all. They're just they're just kind of flashy. But that's that's a whole other conversation. I did want to check in with you.
One thing, let me just make one more remark about Davy, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I met Davy over in England, in Redditch. I was doing a speaking tour in England, sponsored by Sage and by Partridge Hook Company. And I met Davy at a restaurant, or kind of a bar restaurant, across the street from Partridge Hook Company. And we, at first, we didn't communicate very well together, but I met him another time or two, and each time after that we became closer and closer friends because he didn't look like an expert, but that young man knew fly fishing from one end to the other. I mean, he blew my mind away with the amount of knowledge he had about the history of fly fishing and about creative fly fishing and about fly fishing techniques. And so he started doing lectures in the United States, and he met a gal up in Chicago, and he married her, and he was living up there with her and working at a fly shop up there. And I invited him down to Arkansas to fish with me for a few days. And when he came and fished in Arkansas with me, he went back home, told his wife he was moving to Arkansas. She said, "I'm not leaving my job." And he said, "Okay, we'll get a divorce." And he divorced her and moved to Arkansas, and he's lived here happily ever since.
Wow. No kidding. I didn't know that story. Oh, my goodness.
And that young man, he's not young anymore, but he's a hell of a lot younger than I am. He found out more about that White River system in 4 or 5 years, and it took me 20 years to learn. It was because he is just one of those guys that, boy, he does his homework.
Yeah.
And he does it. He looks way past just what he sees at first. He looks for much deeper meanings on almost any technique or flying. And there's no better fly tower as far as the perfection of technique than that guy has.
Yeah, that definitely. And I'll put some links to some of his stuff in the show notes as well. And yeah, the White River. It seems like we keep coming back to that river, and I'm not sure.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah, why is the White River? Maybe talk just briefly why it's unique, and if there are any other rivers out in that area that are even close to that river.
Well, first of all, the White River, the source of it, is the Ozark Mountains, and the Ozark Mountains are limestone. And they get about 40 to 50 inches of rainfall a year there. So you get a lot of runoff, but also a ton of aquifers. And all that water that runs into the White River basically is really, really high in nutrient. And then the White River itself, basically below Bull Shoals down, there's a better part of 75 or 80 miles of river that support trout there. And it's a big river. It's 200 to 400 feet wide. And every day when they generate water out of Bull Shoals down, that's like tidal effects in the ocean. And the fish in the river go through, these feeding cycles according to the tides of the rivers. And so it's rich in all kinds of invertebrates. I mean, all kinds, as well as tons of minnows and crawfish. And so the fish grow phenomenally well there because of the size of the water and the year-round perfect temperature and the amount of food. And there's probably not a more productive piece of water in North America than that, certainly for brown trout.
No kidding.
There's the average brown trout there is probably 18 to 20 inches, and it's produced some 30 and 40 pounders.
Wow.
So it's phenomenal. And it's a river now, Dave, where you can go in a tributary river called North Fork River.
Oh, yeah.
Where you can catch, on any given day, rainbows and browns, 3 species of cutthroat trout and brooks, and a brook trout. So that's a double grand slam.
Exactly. Yeah. What is the? So that's a double grand slam, and is that something? I know you've had some stories of doing maybe even more than a double grand slam. Is there? You can catch a lot of species out there, right?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to note, Brian recently was talking about streamers. He was on, and he's fishing the North Fork out there. Are streamers? Is that something you got into as far as tying or fishing any?
Oh yeah, well,
yeah.
The Whitlock sculpin probably is kind of my days hopper of the streamer world, and I've tied a lot of muddler type streamers. Yeah. Mostly my streamers imitate shad, forage fish, and or sculpin type flies, darters, and sculpins and gobies and that sort of thing. Because to me, streamers for trout are for big trout, not just to catch trout. But when I go after a trout with a streamer. I'm looking for something 10 pounds or over, and so I tie 5, 6, 8 inch long streamers and fish them predominantly in horrible weather and high water and at night to catch as big a trout that I can possibly can. So that's my kind of forte with them. But when I'm fishing in the daytime and wade fishing, what have you, I'm more of a nymph fisherman or dry fly fisherman for trout.
Yeah, perfect. And I did want to know also on the, I think when I think of entomologists, I think of, some of the books I've had on my shelf, and, Rick Hafley is an entomologist, that's out in this area. For you, I always kind of put you in that category as well, but would you consider yourself kind of an entomologist, or what would you think? I know.
Well, yeah. That's been something that I really didn't plan for. I just was trying to learn, because I've never taken an entomology course in my life, but I just studied books and studied the insects and and drawn them and photographed them and checked stomachs for fish or what their feeding preferences are. And so I've gained a lot of knowledge like that. If I had one guru in that particular topic, it was Gary Borger. I listened to Gary one time at a Trout Unlimited meeting, and the perspective that he had about, quote, kind of matching the hatch, just turned all the lights on for me as far as that subject. And so I kind of followed, his way of thinking about that. And the first book I wrote was because of that. It was a Guide to Aquatic Trout Foods. Yeah. And Dave, that's sold all over the world. It's still the most popular fishing aquatic insect, fly fishing aquatic insect book. It's not only for fly fishing and fly tires, but a lot of universities use it too as a textbook.
That's right. Cool. Yeah. And you mentioned, I was going to ask you about that, Gary Borger, and, we've talked about some big names, and I've had him on as well. Any other people in your life, that you would consider mentors that helped you, kind of, along the way?
I got my first fly fishing mentor was Joe Brooks, because he was writing for Outdoor Life at the time, and he was always out fishing out west, and he was holding a big brown trout or what have you. And, a kid living in Oklahoma, he looked like a real hero, a real superhero, and he was a good man. And I became, before he passed on, we became very close friends, and he was just a remarkable spokesperson, I think, for fly fishing in those days. The one that probably was that I learned most technical information from was a gentleman called Al McLean.
Oh, yeah.
And Al was the fly fishing and fishing editor for Field and Stream for a lot of years. And he was a remarkably good fly fisherman, but he had a very intuitive mind, and he was more of an intellect in fly fishing than he was necessarily just an avid fly fisherman. And I learned so much from him. And then another guy that was so cool was Ted Trueblood. And Ted was, from out west, and Field and Stream talked him into coming to New York for a few years and writing for them. But he eventually got tired of that because he was a real mountain man. And so he went back to Idaho and spent the rest of his life there catching trout and writing about them from there. But those three guys were fantastic.
Yeah.
And then the fourth one, it was my conservation mentor, was Lee Wulff.
Oh, yeah.
Because Lee Wulff was the father of catch and release in this country, maybe the world. His principle was that a big fish is too valuable to just catch once.
Yep.
And so he encouraged people to release the fish so they could be recycled or could reproduce. And I just admire that so much.
Yeah, that is great. And you just talked about four people that are, big names to me. And I Joe Brooks, I've actually had the nephew on who did a documentary on his life, and we talked about his.
He was so cool.
Yeah,
he was just so cool.
He had a very a part of his life that was pretty tough. They talk about in the documentary where he was actually living on the streets for a portion of time.
Yeah.
But he came out of it. The amazing thing was he came out of that period and he dedicated his life to teaching people about fly fishing. And obviously, you're one of those people that he influenced. Al McLean, I have some books, some old books from Al McLean, and I've heard of Ted Trueblood. I haven't interviewed anybody to talk about them. That's something maybe I can dig into more at a later point.
Well, boy, he was quite a guy, I'll tell you. He was amazing. He was a really, really good rider.
Yeah.
He's got an encyclopedia called Al McLean's Fishing Encyclopedia. And it takes a pretty good-sized man just to pick it up. It's like one of the big dictionaries, but and almost everything you could think of in fishing is in that encyclopedia. It's amazing accumulation of art, and I've got a full page of my flies.
Oh, cool.
In it, but Al was quite a guy.
Cool. Yeah, I'll put a link out to that one as well if we can. I'm not sure if people can still find that online out there. So. We're going to Dave. We're going to wrap this thing up here pretty quick. I just want to check on a couple of things before we do.
Okay.
One of them, you've done a ton of stuff. Obviously, you've had this amazing career in fly fishing. Is there anything that you think of as you're kind of most proud of over all the years, everything you've done?
Well, let me just say this, and this is to people who, one way or the other, have some kind of an inferiority feeling about themselves. That when I was born, I had a very difficult birth and received a pretty bad back injury from it. And then before I was 4 years old, I had rheumatic fever and polio. And I was pretty much an invalid until I was 6 or 7 years old. And when I discovered fly fishing, every day after that, I became a stronger person. And no doctor that I ever talked to said I'd live to be 30. And I'm 86.
Wow.
And I'll say this, there's two things that caused that: fly fishing and having a good wife. And those two things gave me, the incentive to become a really good person and work hard and have a great life. And I think that anybody that takes up this sport, that they'll receive those kinds of blessings.
That is powerful, and I think Emily, she's there with you, right? That's
she's my soulmate. Oh, she's a good gal.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I'll put a link. I know there's been you guys have been on at least one podcast where I think both of you were on, so I'll put a link out to that show. And I go back to Joan Wulff again because that was way back at episode 100, and at the end of that episode, she actually gave me relationship advice, which is really amazing. And she said if you could get along with your partner on the river, then you're good. And Megan, who I consider my soulmate as well. We struggle at home, but when we get on the river, it's our happy place. So I kind of feel like, you know what I mean? Do you think there's some truth to that?
Yeah. Emily's my favorite fishing partner.
There you go.
And I'll tell you a really funny story if you've got time.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Several years ago, she became enamored about kayaks, the sit-on types.
Yep.
And so, and I'm a canoe person, and 90% of the fishing that I choose to do in a boat's in a canoe, and I just grew up doing that. And I'd paddled her for years in canoes, and she paddled me some as we fished, but mostly I paddled her. Well, she got this gorgeous kayak, and we went down our favorite river here in Oklahoma, the Illinois River, for about 10 miles afloat, fishing for bass. And so she was fishing out of her kayak, and I was fishing out of a solo canoe. And so when we got in that evening and loaded the boats up, I said, "Well, hon, what did you think about fishing out of your kayak?" She said, "You want to know the truth, Dave? I'd really rather you paddle me in a canoe." She said, "It was because I could visit with you, plus I could catch a lot more fish because I didn't have to paddle."
That's right.
And she's only been in that kayak 3 or 4 times since then, but she's been in our canoe, maybe 50 times. So.
There it is.
So anyway, but I always was amused at that.
Yeah. No, that's a good story for sure. And one more big one. This kind of goes back. This is kind of a fun question as well, but I'm not sure where you were when you were 25 years old, but if you think of that person, that kid back in the day, would there be any advice you would give him, yourself back when you were 25? Now that you have a life of what you've done?
Well, the only thing that I would, that I just got really concerned about is that I never knew how to manage my income. And I would advise anybody that's going to be self-employed or try to be comfortably retired at a certain age to take some business courses to be able to manage their finances, because that you don't make a lot of money in this sport, but you make enough that if you manage it properly, you wouldn't be you could be independent by the time you're 70 years old. But and that's what I would do. I would instead of taking maybe so much chemistry and physics and biology, I would have taken a couple, 3 good business courses.
That's it. That's a great tip. And there's tons of stuff
because
now.
we all have to make a living.
Yep.
And we all have to make that money do the best it can for us. And if you don't take a business course, or understand business, that money goes away in a hurry without really being able to make it work for you.
That's right. No, it does. Yeah, money comes and goes for sure. Hey, and you also the Hall of Fame, right? You were inducted into the Hall of Fame. Was that? Can you talk?
Well, I'm in 7 Hall of Fames. Which one are you talking about?
Oh wow. Well, maybe you could just talk about the one that's the the biggest one that sticks out to you. I'm not even sure the 7. What are the 7 Hall of Fames?
Well, one of them is the Catskill Hall of Fame. One's the Appalachian Hall of Fame. Another one's the Southern Fly Fishing Hall of Fame. Another one's the Sports Fishing Hall of Fame.
Okay.
Which is basically up in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Another one is the German Hall of Fame. And let's see, maybe I think there's one more. Oh, the IJF just made me a member of their Hall of Fame.
Oh wow, okay. So there's a whole bunch. I didn't realize there was a bunch of Hall of Fames.
Well, if you live long enough, I guess you'll make them all.
Well, some people will. I don't think. You got to put your time in now. You've had let's see, we're in the 20. Yeah, you've had 60 years, right, of full time fly fishing. I'll
tell you one funny story though. I was down in Atlanta, and they were having a ceremony inducting some Hall of Fame people into the Southern Fly Fishing Hall of Fame, and they told me, they'd like for me to attend the meeting because I was going to be inducted in. So I attended, and the master of ceremony started talking about me, and when I walked up there, I thought he was going to faint because he thought I was dead.
Really?
And so because nobody told him, because I don't think he was actually a member of the group. I think they had just asked him because he was a good speaker and whatever.
Oh, wow.
To be master of ceremony. And his jaw dropped like you can't believe when I walked up and I'm Dave Whitlock, or something like that. But
that's awesome.
But everybody just died laughing. They thought that was so funny because he was so startled that I was still alive.
That's perfect. Perfect, Dave. All right. Well, hey, I'll let you get out of here in the next, kind of 6 months to a year. Anything we can expect from you? Anything new you got going? It sounds like you got a new book you're working on, right?
Well, that hopefully I can find the time to do the new book, and then because it's basically a lot of what I've talked about, how I overcame the handicaps and grew up, and how I learned how to tie flies, and how, because I didn't like fly fishing and have an instructor, I developed my own techniques. And initially, I thought it was a handicap, but Dave, it was actually a blessing, because I developed techniques that were sometimes a lot better than they would have taught me otherwise. And then there's the second part of the book is materials and tools and all of the paraphernalia in fly fishing, and then the last half is 36 of the original flies that I've created, like today's hopper and the wet hair bug and scope, and how to tie them.
That's so cool. And what's the name? Is there a title of the book?
Fly Tyer's Life.
Fly Tyer's Life. That's perfect. That just covers it. So this episode we're doing here is going to live out there for many years. So I'll put a link when that comes out to the book. And
okay. Good.
I wanted to ask you what your top 10 flies were. So that covers it there.
The reason that I'm really going to the trouble of this book, other than just is that most of the time when people have talked to me about writing a book, they say, when are you going to do, a book about your fly tying? And I've done a lot of articles, but I never really put a full book together. And so it's probably the one subject that's been most requested for me to do, and I haven't done it. So I'm going to endeavor to create a really good, fine book that will be all about that subject.
Perfect. And how many books do you have out there now published? They're the old anything?
5 that I did up, solely by myself.
Yeah, that's right. 5 books, and then you've done another 20 or 30 where you had some.
Oh, yeah. I've collaborated, right? And I might be the champion forward writer too.
Right.
I've written a lot of forwards, which is a real honor. I love doing it.
Yeah.
But it was just so interesting because being able to make comments on other people's work.
That's right. What is the secret to writing a good forward in a book? Any tips there?
Yeah, well, to know the person.
Yeah.
And of course, obviously, to be able to read or see some part of the book.
Yeah.
To really see what's there before you start talking about it. But usually, the book author is a really unique and special person. And what makes you want to read somebody's book or look at somebody's art is knowing that they're a special person. And that's what I usually try to dwell on is how unique that person is and what a good opportunity we have to be able to share his knowledge.
That's it. That's it, Dave. Well, you're obviously a very unique person in how you've combined your art and illustrations with your writings and entomology and everything. It's been cool to see all these years. So I just wanted to say thanks for everything you've done in fly fishing. And
appreciate that, Dave.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on here, and I'll be keeping you're only 86, so you got quite a few years left here. I was talking, we were joking not recently, but I interviewed Frank Moore is out in the West here. He's a big steelhead guy, and he was 90. Let's see, I think he's 95. And I remember when we're not in person here, but I remember when I shook his hand, he felt like he was crushing my hand. It was so strong.
Yeah, wow.
You know what I mean? Like, so 95 is like the new, I think the new 75 or whatever they say, right? So I'm looking forward to seeing more work from you as we go here, Dave.
Yeah, well, we are living a lot longer and staying healthy while we do it. Thank goodness for good medics and medicines and good lifestyles now. But because when I was a young person, most people were pretty well over the hill by the time they were 65.
Yeah, gosh, isn't that crazy? So you remember that time when 65 was old, and now it's totally changed.
Yeah.
That's right.
So anyway.
Good stuff. All right, Dave, I'll put a link to davewhitlock.com if they want to connect with a lot of the resources, things we talked about. And we'll just until I connect with you later on, just want to thank you again.
Okay, Dave. I've really enjoyed being Dave Whitlock with you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
So there you go. If you want to find all the show notes with all the links we covered, just go to wetflyswing.com/160. And now, a poem read from Henry Hughes, the deputy editor of the Fly Fishing and Tying Journal.
All right, thank you. Thanks a lot. A lot of you know when you're steelhead fishing, you may have 1 or 2 shots at a fish after many hours on a cold river. So this poem, Steelhead Almost, is about that. It's about 2 men. One in particular really wanted to catch a fish because if he got a nice fin clip fish, he was going to bring it home. And his wife had planned a barbecue. And so he was hoping to bring home some fish. But too dark to retie, they walk fishless over the bridge, break down rods and unboot for the dry drive home. Oh well, one man says, that's fishing. The other doesn't want to talk. There's a barbecue tomorrow. If you catch something, she said, that'd be wonderful. Following headlights, he feels again the strike behind the stone, cherry blushed chrome, leap silver and dive, then gone. Canyon pouring river, swallows spading air. The trees shrug as if nothing happened. In a hole deeper than sleep, the steelhead undulates fragrance and flow, nudging forward 3,000 orangey eggs in her bright sleeve.
That was awesome. Thanks, Henry, for taking the time to do that. If you want to read a poem on an upcoming episode, you can reach out to me. Just head over to wetflyswing.com/members and sign up there for a free version, and you can check in with me. And I want to also check in, if you have a business and want to grow your online influence, you can head over to my new podcast at outdoorsonline.co. That's outdoors with an S. Thanks again for stopping by today to check out the show. I'm looking forward to catching up soon. I hope to maybe see you on the river or online.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com. And if you found this episode helpful, please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes.